Hi, Phil. It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Courtney.
How is well, I'll say happy full moon because it's Monday
Yes.
and the beginning of the week, and we're at a very intense, we're at the intense full moon of the Buddha moon.
Oh, I didn't know it was a Buddha moon.
Yeah, it's a Buddha moon. It's where supposedly the Buddha got enlightened from this moon, which probably because he was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, Scorpio energy. It just gets right down to the root.
Yeah, it hits it hits us in our feelings. I've
Hmm.
been thinking so much about just the energy of knowing your value and knowing your worth and believing in yourself and how easy that is, how easy it is for us to forget how divine we are.
Yes, yes. And I think that is what is at the root of all religious teachings, right? One way or the other, it's an attempt to remind us that we have a relationship with the divine. I mean, or we are the divine. It depends on what religious view that you believe in, but it's more or less the same. It's always about mm, bringing us back to that awareness, that consciousness, because we forget. I forget.
Yeah. No, I mean I forget too that we are, I guess that we're whole, but I think it's an interesting thing that you just said because it's the basis of all religion. Right. And I keep on thinking about like the opposite, right? So the opposite effect, right? So yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Is Scorpio is you have to go to like the depths, and usually you get to the depths by other people, right? Like the other people bringing up the feelings in you. And then how do you remember? But I guess that actually would be that after Scorpio, you get Sagittarius. And so you would then have to have faith. And faith does, I guess you do find that through religious belief or
Hmm.
from figuring it out on your own, right? I mean, the Buddha did not go to church. He sat under a
Oh,
tree.
right. But they definitely had a philosophy that had everything to do with, being aware that, your energy is part of the energy of the cosmos, right? That you're not an isolated unit and you're not independent of these energies.
Well, and I think that's why we're doing this, right? Why we're talking about the sky and then how the sky is moving, because chances are, if you are feeling something, other people are feeling it. And I do understand that it is moving through our lives differently, but at the end of the day, I think the feelings are very similar. The feelings that we have as humans are not so different from one another.
No,
And
no, we definitely, I think we identify with each other's feelings more than anything else because I think poetry and music or any form of art have their power because of that, because touches, it bypasses our mind to go to our feelings or to our heart.
yeah, yeah, that's so true. Well, you told me about Conclave, and I said to you, I loved Conclave so much. I thought it was such a brilliant movie. I loved the movie. So thank you. I don't think I would have seen it. I have to tell you, if you didn't say, keep on. I think you must have went like 4 times. Watch the movie. Watch the movie. So sometimes I think you have to like pester me a bit. So thank you for keep on pushing me, Phil. I like it. So I'm so grateful I ended up watching it. And I was thinking I think it's right, like something about the way that movies or music or art makes you think about things.
Mhm.
And it is similar to like how the nodes are right now is the idea of belief or faith and doubt, and that area that Pisces Virgo, like that day-to-day life and the doubting and the it's so
That's right.
to doubt. And then how do you let go and let God? It is so hard because life throws you daily issues that you have to face and uncomfortableness and your wounds and your body just not feeling well.
Yep. Those, yeah, you, and those are things that require attention and you can't bypass them. It's because it's your experience of living. But that's not all it is. You know, there's there's your experience and then your perception of the experience, how you feel about it. And two people can have the same experience and have completely different feelings about it.
Yeah. Well, and our and I love that word perceptions. Like I think that is like how we perceive things is based on our own wounds and our own experience with things, and we would have a very different view. Well, I think it's even true if how someone like if there's an accident, right? And like five people are watching it, they'll have they'll see five different things. It was the same accident. So how
That's
we
right.
things.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting, but but there is this, okay, I was thinking about this. Everything has meaning, right? So the same idea of perceivement, how we perceive things, it's also what we make it mean. Like we get to we make it mean, and usually it's based on wounds, right? Based on the other person's bringing up the wounds in us, and then what we make it mean. But yeah, it is interesting how we do perceive things and how what is the truth, I'll say.
Right. And I think I go back to this again and again, but if you're letting the ego run the show and letting your ego perceive things, then you're very limiting. You're limiting, self-limiting, and you're causing yourself a lot of anguish, unnecessary anguish, because the ego requires full control at all times. So we know of people who let their ego run wild. We call them egomaniacs. And we all have that egomaniac inside of us. And my maniac expresses itself sometimes, but it always feels like reaction. This happened to me. What's my reaction? I have to guard against or defend or be one step ahead or whatever. But that's not ultimately a good feeling. And it's the opposite of liberation. It's a trap. And I see, I see myself expressing it, and I see a lot of it in the world. And that's where things can get very dangerous for everybody.
So it's so funny because that was like I had done a speech, I'll say, and it we were talking about the idea of action versus reaction. And if you can, so I wonder if there's something to it, right? Because I think the ego and somehow is protecting you, right? It's like your ego wants to protect you from getting hurt, from being offended or whatever. And then that becomes the reaction. And something about, well, understanding whatever feelings are being brought up and then what action do I need to take versus having a reaction. And I think the action is so much about being brave and courageous, but the reaction is actually out of a feeling. right? And I do think there's something with that ego, and I don't think the ego is so I I don't think it's so obvious. I mean, I think it's interesting because you said, like, we say egotistic. I mean, I mean, okay, how about if we say personality? Because I always think something about like our personalities are ego too. It's like our labels we wear, right? The labels that we matter to us, and that maybe so yeah, it's an interesting question because I think ego, how people speak about ego is very different, but are we speaking about the same kind of ego, you and I?
Well, you brought up the competition, and we had such a great talk afterwards, Courtney. I'm so glad that we did, because I think it was my ego who that was perceiving the situation, and it was only because I think that I reached out with some questions to get feedback that the the whole issue that I had totally dissipated. I mean, and I feel so grateful that I went through the experience. Well, at the time, I didn't, because I was kind of soaking in feelings, but I was also misperceiving the situation. Uh, I wasn't stepping back to see what was really going on, and it was all fine. It was all fine. But in my little corner of reality, that's not the way I saw it. So I was perceiving it in a very narrow way, but also very deep and personal, like a very tiny slice, but it was really deep. And I think, without the ego being too involved, I could step back and say, wait a second, ego. There's no reason to be defensive here. None at whatsoever. You're it's okay. You can go back to sleep, take a nap. You know, this is actually a very good thing that happened, and I learned a lot, and uh, it ultimately a great experience, and I'm glad I went through it. But it had all the feels in it, the highs.
Now think about it. I actually think I've been thinking about this because it did have all the feels in it, but I think that's what was meant to happen this month in general, whether we were going through this experience or not. I think people's own feelings about their worthiness are going to come up right now. And whether you have success or you don't have success, right? It's a very interesting, I don't know. I think what we make things mean. But yeah, we have to be very careful. It's a very I think it's a sneaky thing how we can allow outside experiences change how we feel about ourselves or what we make anything mean and how we perceive things. So I do think I'll say it was a very good experience for me too. And I'll say I did lose. I went for a competition and it is not fun to lose, but I actually am very proud of myself for competing and trying to do something and
Mhm.
um, being brave
I,
and being
yeah,
courageous and knowing that I did my best.
yes. And so I was in that conversation, and I was also lost, but I so admire your approach to it and your take on it, because you had you showed a lot of resiliency. So
Yeah, but
I
not in everything. I have other issues, right? There was other
right.
issues up that I was like, okay, I don't. In that, I was surprised. Honestly, I was surprised how in that moment how I did handle it. But I am very, you know, I keep on thinking though. It's okay. I was saying this about it's what we make it mean, and if we have to be so careful of what we make anything mean, and you could lose everything, right? The ego personality could lose everything. It could lose every label it has. It could lose
Yeah.
everything, not just a competition, but it could lose everything. I think about that so often, right? Like, and then you're standing there. That I think that's like the full moon energy. I'll share this, the screen. Oh, but you could lose everything. Can you see that, Phil?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Is it full?
Yes, it's full. It looks great.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's like the whole theory of the full moon, which is the sun is in Taurus, and then you could be standing there naked and you have nothing. You don't even have your clothes on. And it could all be taken away from you. There's a TV show. I can't remember. We're watching a show. I don't even know the name. It's on I don't even know what it's on. It's on Apple TV, and the guy loses his job. He has a lot of money and he loses his job, and everything is taken away from him, kind of like he had. And it's like he kind of sees life in a whole other way, but it's just because he lost everything that he kind of sees it. So I actually do think you get more when you don't win.
Is it Severance? Is that the name of the show, Severance?
No, I have to look this up because it's not Severance. I can't I don't seem to watch that, but it's this show on Apple TV. Wait, hold on. Are you watching Severance?
No. I'm not watching really much of anything, so that was a wild
Oh,
guess.
your friends and neighbors.
Oh,
It's
your friends.
neighbors. And the best part is so I used to live in a town in New York, and it's actually filmed at the country club in my
Oh, wow.
it's
That's so, that's amazing.
actually a very exclusive country club. And
Mhm.
I don't, and it doesn't depict that country club, but it is funny because it was right in my town. We had these
That's great.
country clubs in our town. There's the smallest town and all these country clubs, which is funny because and then there was the town pool, which is what we did. But not, but I will say that he loses it all, and then he starts stealing all these things from his neighbors. He's like, they have too much stuff and they don't even appreciate it. And I think it's such a perfect example of what the full moon's about. How do you like yourself, even if everything's taken away from you?
Right. And what if what if everything was taken away from you? And what if we went through that competition and we didn't have our understanding of our connection to everything? What if we didn't feel like we had the spiritual connection we have to our cosmos and each other? If we did not have that understanding, what would what would that competition experience feel like? It would feel like nothing but a total burn, a, just a total defeat, you know, bruised ego, no way to get out of that spin of feeling bad about yourself and about everything. So I really am so glad that we're here talking about what we talk about, because if you can draw on that understanding that you're part of something much, much larger and that your soul is going through these experiences, right? It's not all ego, that your soul is finding meaning in these things.
But
Then you can come,
important, right? Because I'm going to just show you what you're saying right here is that hard work of remembering your divinity, that North Node in Pisces, that hard work of remembering with Neptune right there in Aries, being brave enough to remember. What would it
and
feel?
we have, yeah, and everybody has to continually remember that. Everybody, all of us need to speak it to ourselves and speak it to each other. We need to hear it all the time. And some people will completely reject what we're talking about, Courtney.
You're going to suffer. I do think that if we don't listen, I think that's why we're doing this call, right? Is that we can hopefully, if someone's watching this and they could see this, and maybe they don't understand astrology, but they could see that I could be like I'll circle it, right? I could be very critical of myself. I cannot believe in myself, right? And then wait, look at that. I mean, I think this is amazing, right? Because it's like swearing it. my thoughts will make me it made me crazy. I could go crazy and I can feel like a victim or a loser. Like, and this is not just about this, it's about anything that we can't control here. And we can't control anything. We can't control anything. But how do we believe and how do we say really, I think but we go back and I think this is so funny because I love that we're just this is the sign, this is just a map of the sky right now. So right now when we're talking Jupiter's on top of the sky. And I think it's no accidents because words really matter and what we say to ourselves. And so I mean, you and I are very similar. We could easily both go down this road of having our words in our minds say things that aren't kind. And we get to choose what we make anything mean. But I'm very grateful for the sky because I do and I do follow the moon every day, and that's kind of what we talked about last week. But it makes my life a lot easier. But I'm really grateful to have this perspective. But I also think everyone's ready to have it. So here, if you go back, that's the high side right now is doing the work of remembering our own divinity. And
And
I
Jupiter is there helping us, right? Right at the top of the chart. What a great energetic place for it to be.
It's making us uncomfortable. So right the second it's on the top of it's making everyone uncomfortable, but it's like the skip step, right? So in between the nodes, right the second, right, you have this ability to change your beliefs about everything by what you put in the information you put in and what you believe. And you better question everything. And if you believe something and it's not kind to yourself, oh, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Don't believe the hype. Question that Jupiter and Gemini is question everything because I don't know. It just doesn't mean it's meaning what you're making it mean. It's meaning what you're making it mean. So that's Monday. So happy Monday.
Yes.
That's actually really, I'll say, not just Monday, but what you said about I'm so grateful I have this belief system of knowing that I'm divine. And if I didn't, what would I be like? But thank you for saying that because I don't think that's just right now. I think that is for the next few months that's our job.
Yes. And it doesn't mean at all that I have answers. It's still a mystery, this whole life experience and our connection to a higher consciousness, the divine consciousness, that remains a mystery. It always will. But I think if people could just be silent long enough to listen to what your intuition is always telling you, and that intuition has to compete with all the other things that are going on in the world, including your ego.
Well,
But
this is interesting about the intuition, though. I think what's interesting about what you said about intuition is are we are we so not used to listening to our intuition? Are we so used to just being that was so interesting what you said is to find the quiet daily, to remember because you won't find it in the noise of the day.
absolutely right.
Well, and that is why the Buddha, I just think it is interesting that he was under a tree. And here you go to Taurus, sun, it's nature. He was silent. He wasn't in a church. He wasn't with his family. He was not in his story. He was sitting under a tree. And I think it got struck by lightning, which is so funny because look, wait, right now this is now Tuesday's chart, Tuesday right around 3 o'clock's chart. And he was struck by, I think the tree was struck by lightning. So shocking something shocking happening to him. And he woke up. And I think that's so funny because as the week goes on, the sun is moving closer to Uranus, which is asking us to allow for the shock factor.
That's right.
Yeah, and then we can have the breakthroughs. And then
Hmm.
you said is so brilliant just because you've been talking so much about faith. And then we could see that we're having a Sagittarius moon on Wednesday. Yeah, we are on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we're at Tuesday. We're having a Sagittarius moon, and it's the day of Mars on Tuesday. So where's Mars at? I like to see where Mars is. It's at Leo. And so, oh wow, interesting. The moon will be trining Mars. How can you shine? How do you have faith in yourself to shine?
Yep.
How do you have faith? Like, how do you act? Like, here, I'll ask you a question. As we could see that, we'll say that's Tuesday, but we'll say to you, how do you have faith in yourself to shine anyway, through anything?
Yeah, that's where you're facing yourself in situations like that. Can you draw the inspiration and the energy and the Aries courage to be a hero from within? Because that's where it's going to come from. You, ultimately, that you're you're self-propelling. You'll have lots of support, but you're the actor.
But I think that's what's interesting about life is I think that we're taught from a very young age to get the applause from outside. So Mars and Leo is the drive to get applause, right? To get appreciation for something. And we're taught actually through life to get appreciation from outside of ourselves. But really what we need to do is appreciate ourselves and cheer for ourselves. And that doesn't mean we don't cheer for other people and we don't appreciate when other people cheer for us. But if you don't trust what you're saying and you don't like what you're saying, um, you can't shine.
Right. And sometimes you have to shine knowing that you might not get any applause, because that's your inner warrior and there's something that you have to do, and some things might ruffle feathers and
Well, wait,
you know
most times you're not going to get applause. I mean, think about what we do on a daily basis that we don't get an A for or we don't get applause. And yet maybe we have to change how I don't, I never thought about it. I mean, I do think about this, but not really like this.
yeah.
I'll cheer.
Well,
I think that's like my job. Someone once said your job is like a spiritual cheerleader, and I am very good at doing the cheering. So I think it's nice to cheer people on, but I don't think we should need it from outside of ourselves.
right, right. And I think that people aren't aware of just how heroically they behave in daily life and the great accomplishments they've made in their lives. I don't think they see it enough, but I think if they just did a little calculation in their mind and asked themselves, what has happened in the past 5 years? I think they could really say, oh boy, this happened and I did this and that wasn't something that I expected. Like I tried this thinking I would get this outcome, but another completely much better outcome occurred. I don't think people do that enough.
Well, and I usually think I think that we should definitely do that. So Tuesday, we're gonna applause for ourselves. Everybody's gonna applause for like have self, like what does it mean to say you're great? To say,
Mhm.
can you see this? Can
Yeah, I
you,
see it.
yeah, I'll say, can you say you're great today? Literally on Tuesday, you're gonna say you're great. And
Yep.
your Mars will be happy. Your Mars will be happy. But I mean, it is that I always think maybe it's simpler than we make it out to be, astrology, right? It doesn't have to be so complicated. It's how do we take it and live it the highest way? And so on Wednesday, it's Mercury's day, which is Wednesday. Every Wednesday will be Mercury's day, and Mercury's in Taurus, where the sun is in Taurus as well. And the moon here is in Sagittarius. And so we could actually see that. Let's see, because you can't really tell. So now the moon is still in the trine to Mars. And then we can look at Mercury and say, how do we appreciate the simple beauties of life? I'll say, what I don't know what you see here, but like, how do you appreciate the simplicity of life? Like the little small things about yourself that you do every day that you don't even acknowledge yourself, like brushing your teeth.
Hmm.
That's like a very, this is sillier, like the flowers outside or the plants outside, but even brushing your teeth. Do you remember when you were younger, you didn't want to brush your teeth? Every time I brush my teeth, I'm like, I did a good job. I brushed my teeth. Were you
I
good?
can remember being frustrated trying to, I was so small, putting the toothbrush on the counter and hoping that it would stay there and not tip over while I used both hands on the toothpaste tube, and that was a real challenge. And now I just do it so automatically that it's no big deal. But yes, that's a commitment to yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and nurturing and loving to yourself. And it's those day-to-day things. I think it's interesting because here at the South Node, right? So this is actually interesting because then the South Node, the moon will be going towards a square to the South Node. And so your own feelings, how do you have enough faith about your own feelings about that everyday life that we live? It's so interesting. I was really bad at tying my shoes. I had a really hard time figuring out how to tie my shoes. And then I remember being able to tie my shoes and thinking it was the greatest thing ever. And it is, we are so much, I love that what you said is that we're so much more courageous than we give ourselves credit for. And we have grown so much. And sometimes we just have to like take a breath, have a broader view, like Sagittarius moon, a broader view, and look at it and see how far we've come. Do you know that song? See how far we've come.
I don't think I know that.
Yes, it must be a song that one of my girls played. See how I think it's the song that one of my girls played. Yeah, I'm going to my daughter's graduation. I'll be on my way to see my daughter's graduation on this Wednesday.
Amazing. Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
really exciting.
Hard work
Yeah.
to complete something. And
I
this,
love graduation ceremonies. I love them.
do you?
Yes.
Yeah, I love the speakers. I don't know who's speaking at her graduation, but I always think it's so uplifting. I watched graduation commencement speeches because I find them to be so higher perspective, just a higher perspective. And well, it's actually really interesting because the moon on Wednesday, it'll probably be Wednesday night going into Thursday morning, will be opposite Jupiter. So your own beliefs and being careful what you think. I think something about being careful with what you believe, and maybe what you believe is not true. I could look to Thursday to see it's Jupiter's day. So and then look on Jupiter's day, the moon is going to be like opposite towards the opposition.
Yep.
And then going into Capricorn. So and I this is what I love about the full moon. So this week the full moon is shows you what you need to see. Usually not so easy things. So like the parts of ourselves that we don't want to see. And then the next 2 weeks are about, well, what can I do differently? How could I change it? How could I improve it? How could I make things better so that when I start again? And so this is about things finishing, right? So for instance, she's finishing school. And so what's next? But this is true with everybody. I don't know
Hmm.
what you're saying, but it would be very interesting to know. What do you think you're going to release in this 2 week cycle?
There's a few things that I'm I'm waiting for the next couple of days for these things to reveal themselves. And it's funny because I have a hunch that they will because of this full moon. That's the only thing I'm going on is my hunch. These are things that have been simmering for a long time, so I really don't know when or where they might surface again. But I know that they have to be resolved, and I know there'll be some conflict involved and uncertainty and just
How do you
uncomfortable.
know? Wait, this is great, Phil. You're a great example. Is he thinks he knows what's going to happen, but maybe he could be surprised that it might
Yes,
come up how you think it will happen. Wouldn't that be nice?
perfect, perfect example. Perfect example.
But our
Yeah,
basic our remembering of how things were before in our lives, we think it's going to happen that way again. But
yeah,
I will say to you, how about if it's different than you imagined it to be?
right. Exactly.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes. 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 And,
It take
you
away a lot
know,
of your fears and it would allow for a lot more faith.
exactly right. I have to say, I do have faith about ultimate resolutions to all of these things. I definitely have faith in that. It's just that I have to put on my big boy pants and walk through it, which I will.
Brave, I think what's so interesting is bravely. And I think the more brave you are and the more, well, we were just talking about it, right? Not making it mean anything. And
Right.
you know what I find to be really helpful in general is, do you know the Oponopono prayer?
To what?
The Oponopono prayer? Like
No.
it's the Oponopono prayer was a prayer and it says, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. So anything that's happening that you could be reading the news or something and it's a bad story. And even though you had nothing to do with that, you had something to do with it because you're reading the story and you're part of it. And so you almost apologize, you actually apologize for it. And our hardest part is when we're having conflicts with people is that we want to be right. And so we put our defenses up. And so it's a way to, you don't actually have to say you're sorry to them, but it's like taking responsibility for whatever the situation that is happening. And somehow the people that respond in a little different way.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Is that Hawaiian prayer?
It's like it's called Oponopono, and I think it was a Hawaiian thing. And this guy had come up with it, and he went into, now I don't know exactly the story, but he goes into a prison, and there was like the worst of the worst people supposedly. And he starts, and he doesn't ever meet them, but he takes their folder, like he has a folder about like the people, right? And he goes into this prison and he just starts to read their records. And while he's reading them, he sees his part in it. It actually works, by the way. I mean, I have done this with a lot of things, and it's amazing because it's so hard to take responsibility for something in general, especially when you know it's the other person. But yet, so this guy did it for these prisoners, and within, I think, a few months, they were all like rehabilitized. They all were fine. They were not, I think someone saw them, there was compassion. And it wasn't even that they were in person with them. So you don't even have to do the apologies in person. It's just like, I'm sorry. For whatever happens, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And I'll say it's easier when it's not something that's personal, but when it's personal, it's a little harder to say I'm sorry. But it's like I'm sorry, and somehow I've created this situation, and so please forgive me, and I love you. Thank you. And it just, I think usually people get defensive when there's things that you want to have come to the surface. And I'll say, you don't have to be right, but when you don't have to be right, you could be happy. That's like my favorite line.
Yeah, because you're releasing yourself of the burden of being right. You don't have to defend it or argue it. You just let it go and breathe.
So I think I'm sorry. And I think, and then they just sometimes could go on and you say, I'm sorry, and really mean it. Just, it's okay. Because
And that's a
we're hurting each other in some ways because that's how the pain comes up. So we're meant to kind of hurt each other, I guess.
well, it's certainly a very compassionate approach, isn't it? to think that way. Because then you're really, you're putting yourself in the shoes of the other, which is, I think, what's so wonderful about us as humans, that we have that capacity to do that. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and it's so
really,
hard to be human, right? It's
yeah,
there's nothing easy about this journey that we're all on. And I keep saying, well, why don't they just tell us in kindergarten, you're gonna have lots of feelings come up and you're gonna be okay.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
I'm going with someone yesterday and we were looking up where okay, so it was what house would gifts be considered? Like someone gives you a gift. And you're gonna be very surprised by this, Phil.
someone, I always think 5 and 11 as,
Yeah,
the,
I think, but it is eighth house. It is eighth house Scorpio energy. And that is like, I thought that is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard because you're getting it, it's like someone else's money is giving you a gift. And then but I thought, oh my God. So if you're willing to go to the darkness, you're gonna get a gift. So I thought that was a good way to see the Scorpio moon. Or
yeah,
actually what's going on
yeah.
right in general this month is if I'm willing to go to the darkness and face the things I don't want to face, there will be a gift at the end for me.
And isn't it interesting that Sagittarius follows Scorpio? Because I think of Sag, Jupiter, Santa Claus, the gift giver, right? So you just go through, you have to go deep and go through it. You come out, you surface again and receive the gift.
Oh, I love it. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. And so that's Thursday, so we're going from on Thursday around 3 o'clock. It looks like we're going to be going towards Capricorn moon. I don't have like the void moon and how long the void moon is right in front of me, but that's not so important. But on Thursday, going into Friday, it's about climbing a mountain, the effort we put into things, right? And actually, it's and I what's interesting is if we go a couple hours, let's go into a couple hours of just watching that moon go into Capricorn. So then Capricorn, watch this, it's going to be squaring on Friday. We'll actually switch to Friday because I think that will be very interesting to look on Friday's day. It will be squaring, the moon will be squaring Venus, going towards a square to Venus.
Yeah.
The hard work in relationships so I don't know. He said that like he's going to be doing some things in relationships, we'll say, or maybe I'm sure that something about what you said has to do with another person. And so I'll say to you, being willing to do the hard work it takes to be brave around with people that we have relationships with. All of the people we have relationships with.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, but I actually think this is so interesting because Venus is going to be moving farther away from Neptune, which is good, but our illusions about our closest relationships, like what we believe about our closest relationships, and maybe there's something that's hidden there. So Friday actually is Venus's day, and so we have to look to Venus and being brave in our relationships, but also as it moves away, and Venus has been in retrograde was 40 days retrograde. I actually think it's just coming out of its shadow now. And so where have I been disillusioned and what do I need to see clearly in my relationships? And where do I need to be very honest? Where do I have to have the courage to be honest and speak the truth? Speak the truth. Like what I need. Like, do you ask for what you need in your relationships? Well, I'll say to you, misconception. So I won't say exactly what it was, but we had something where I made a mistake actually, and I am so sorry. Please forgive me. And I was so grateful you said something because how easy it is. I was thinking, oh my God, it was totally my mistake and I was wrong. And if you hadn't actually had the courage to say something to me, it actually would have caused me a lot more problems ahead of time. And so I was so thankful. So sometimes we could think that, oh, I don't know, we could think maybe not to say something, but how wonderful it is when someone says something. Does that make sense to you, Phil?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Venus is there to help with all of that, to make, whatever it is you're perceiving or misperceiving due to Neptune, there'll be more of an ease to it. So if there is some tension there, you'll get a blessing from Venus to make it move more smoothly. So it's good.
Yeah. Well, and Venus is trining Mars. So again, so Venus will be trining Mars and then it'll be squaring the moon. So discipline, determination, asking for what you want. If you are not being seen, you have to tell people that you need something from them. That you don't expect people to. I think people think they know that you know what they need, and that they know what you need. They don't. They don't know what you need. The only person that knows what you need is you, and you know what you need by knowing what you don't want, and then you have to ask. I go back to asking for what, having the courage and the braveness to ask for what you want, and it's actually really hard to do that.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is. So, well, I hope you could ask for, I always say you just practice with one person. Like if it's not necessarily the one person you want to do it with, can you practice it with another person?
Yeah, that's
Are you courageous with your words?
no, no.
Okay. Well, he's going to work on that. And what I also think was interesting, though, is that Mercury is in an easier sign now. So I wonder if there'll just be more peace in general. Like, Venus is ruled by Taurus, right? I mean, right? And now Mercury's in Taurus. And so just, it's easier now to speak. It's not as defensive, I think. It's a little easier, our conversations.
Yeah, and again, a trine is with Mars and Venus is so supportive that you'll have the backup that you hope for, I think, in any action or interaction that you have. I think it's great that it happens on Friday too, because it's the start of the weekend. So,
Yeah, it is the start of the weekend. I always think of like Leo, that energy is if they're not the right audience, find another audience that appreciates you
hmm
because someone will appreciate you. They will, they
hmm
will, they will. There's always, you know, I heard this thing from someone. It's like nothing sells in the middle. So who will appreciate you is a good question. And look at this. You're right. The weekend we're gonna have a trine. Just like love is in the air.
hmm
And then wait, look at that. On that day, it's Uranus and the sun are right on top of each other. What do you expect? The unexpected, like breakthroughs.
yes.
Don't
I
the hype.
yes. I like to see it as exactly a breakthrough or a sudden leap, like not a baby step, but just a real kind of leap way over the highest fence, and you just get over it, uh, and you reach a new level.
I love that. I love that. Reach a new level, like go to the heights, which is actually so interesting because it's Saturn's day. And I love, look at that. It's Saturn. Wait, okay. I love how intuitive you are, Phil, because you said to leap and reach a new level, and Saturn will be at the last degree in Pisces. It's like the highest point of all. And it is hard work. It is such hard work to remember our divinity, but that each and every one of us is so divine. And that leap, sometimes you just have to take a leap and know, like when Jesus and they were walking on the water, and the only reason why he was able to walk on water is because he actually believed he could walk on water. And then the moment he actually thought about his personhood, I think he's right. Did he go down? He went down. And so something about that is, yeah. So how much it matters that we believe. And look at that. I mean, it's sextiling, right? No, yeah, it's sextiling. So the moon on Saturday, on the day that Uranus is hitting the sun, so we could expect the unexpected. We could have these great breakthroughs. Just anything could happen. Then we have,
Again,
with the effort put in, what we're willing to put the effort in is interesting. And it's trining, it's right, sextiling that Saturn, really helping it. It's saying, yeah, I do the hard work of believing, and look what happened. Wow. It's interesting we do things around 4 o'clock. I actually appreciate that because we're just doing it based on the time. We're not doing 8 o'clock in the morning, which I think is interesting. I wonder if we should switch it next time to see. We'll see if what we like better.
to a different time.
Pick it up. What's Sunday? Sunday is the sun's day.
It looks like it's going to be an eventful weekend, don't you think, Courtney?
Yeah.
Like in a great way, you know, like good surprises, good energy, lots of the planets have your back. So
Yeah. And it's wait, this is going to be a very interesting weekend, Phil, because look at the moon. So the moon is conjunct Pluto. So that
yeah.
means it's conjunct all day on Sunday. Yeah, I have to say, it's going to be a very surprising weekend.
Hmm. Eventful for sure.
Yeah, I think how do you let go? That's what I'll say. That's what I would say. If I was to give advice for this weekend, I would say, how do you really let go? I keep on thinking, if you can't control it, let it go. If you can't control it, let it go. That is what I would say about this weekend, is if you can't control it, let it go. So what can you control and what can't you control?
Right.
What would you say about this weekend? But it is interesting because that I think that it's oh God, it's so hard. It is so hard to not be able to control what happens next, or how.
Yeah, to deal with uncertainty. It's really, but again, I think we're fortunate to have this perspective about our understanding that we're souls having a human experience, right? And that we can't control everything, but we move forward with faith and courage. And that is not that's something that cannot be taken away. If we have it in our hearts, then it's a it's our most powerful ally. And my world would be an absolute nightmare without that understanding. I would be, fearful, reactionary, unthinking, unkind,
Numb.
numb.
Yeah, I think that there's this idea of like you could either believe, and I think if you don't believe, if you don't do that kind of understanding that there is something bigger or something higher, you don't want to feel at all, because it would be too hard.
Yes.
And I don't think it has to, do you ever hear and I know I repeat myself a lot, you don't have to always just go into silence to meditate. You can be washing your hands and just
Yeah.
trying to stay present with washing your hands. Or when you're taking a shower, like when I take a shower, I'm like, okay, I'm in the shower. Where am I? I'm in the shower.
Hmm.
And it just kind of gets me back to remembering that I'm here. Because it's so
Yes.
easy too for me to, right? I have that, we all have this mind that wants to kind of pull us there or think that. And I think that when we can, because I too, without this knowledge, and I actually love astrology for that, it kind of brings, oh, I have something surprising. You want to hear something shocking? You want to hear
Yes.
something about it? Don't think you know what people will do, okay? Because you
Yes.
don't know. So David wrote me a card for Mother's Day, which was very sweet. And in the card, Phil, he said he went on to Google and or like one of those AI things and found out what the moon was after I had each kid. So for Mother's Day. And I was like,
Oh,
I am really impressed. So, and if you had told me he would do that, there would be no, I mean, honestly, this is just every time astrology comes up, he is like, so maybe our calls are working on him. Maybe because he listens. So I'll say to you, maybe he's believing a little bit more.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. Amazing, right? And then what I also thought was interesting was they were wrong AI because then they said that it was going to be he was like, that's what it said. I'm like, no, no, no. What did it say? So it was Scorpio moon and then he said that in the internet, it said that this Mother's Day was going to be a Libra moon and then go into Scorpio. I'm like, no, no, no. This is something I know. He's like, no, no, no. That's what it said. I'm like, I'm telling you, you have to go back and fix it. So I'll say, be careful what you believe that AI says too.
I've heard a lot of um, criticism about AI and astrology, and that it just doesn't work because it's not pulling information accurately. And I find that very interesting, right? Because if you just punch in all the data, you get an accurate output. But without that human interaction, where the astrologer is interpreting it and bringing the human consciousness into the field, and because unless that human consciousness is part of the interpretation, it's not going to have the right energy to it. I know that sounds far-fetched, but this is not from me. This is from what I'm reading you, online, and the the general uh, the the general understanding now is that AI is good for lots of great things, but astrology is not one of them.
Yeah, I do think it's great for a lot of things, but I'll say we better make sure we're aware of the truth before you just believe what the computer says or
Hmm.
human consciousness.
Hmm.
You know, our human, it's so interesting, right? Because even with our human conscious, it goes back to how we perceive things, right? And how yeah, that was a little surprising to me 'cause that is just dates and numbers. And if it got that wrong, I thought, wow, what else is it getting wrong? And then what are we going to believe? Just, just what we see is not always the truth, something like that.
Hmm.
So, but I will say too that maybe the gift of right now is that anything and everything's possible. Be careful what you believe.
Hmm.
And how would you say to know divinity? I mean, how do how would you tell me to remember my divinity?
Well, I would just, say what I always say is that you just need to carry that awareness with you, that you're a body, you're on a physical plane, but you're also a spirit, and you're here to fulfill a destiny, a goal, whatever you call it. But there's a reason while you're here and why you're in this human form having this experience. It's you're growing, and life is going to force you into uncomfortable situations so that you can grow, to test you and challenge you and to make you more aware. So keeping that in mind, just having that other perspective so that you don't, just like I did, I got caught up in this event that happened last week, and the emotions took up so much more space in my head than they ever needed to because I wasn't perceiving things in a clearer way. But if I can step back and understand that, well, wait a second, this is a learning experience, and what what gift will I come away with here? And I did. I really did come away with a great gift.
No, me too. No, me too. And I think that it's yeah, I love this line, like, which you're saying it exactly as it. It's like, why is this happening for me? So in the moment that the uncomfortableness is there is such an opportunity here. And what is the reason? Like, why is this happening for me? And what do I need to gain? How do I improve myself? Or actually, what do I need to know about myself or believe in myself that I'm worthy? I mean, I think that that is so important that we all know our value and our worth. And I'll say to you, Phil, I think you're just, oh, I'm gonna like, but I think you're just the most wonderful, most amazing human. I think you have this twinkle in your eye and you're so bright. Look how uncomfortable he is. We love making Phil uncomfortable. And so it's much easier to hear the bad things, but I'll say to you, it's easier to believe the bad things, but really the truth is that we're really all magnificent people
Yes.
and that we are all worthy. And simply, I honestly think because we're born. And yes, I think we're supposed to go do wonderful things, but that is not why we're wonderful, is for what we do. It's that we wake up every day and we wake up, we do the best we can, moment to moment to moment. And whatever shows up, we got this.
Right. And we're wonderful just because we were born. We were born wonderful, and we were born for a reason. I don't know what, I can't tell you what that reason is, but there's a purpose behind it because there's a purpose behind everything. It's everything that we see is not without purpose. Therefore, I am not without purpose.
You say it in a positive way. I have purpose.
Yes. And that's our job. Our job is to know what that is and to move towards it.
Yeah, and I always think this is so interesting because it doesn't have to be so big.
No, it does not. Absolutely not.
Oh, it's just like everybody is like this like interwoven energy that if we all need each other and we have to appreciate every last the beauty of appreciating these small gifts each moment. And I always think that like, wouldn't it be like nicer if we were just born and then there was like a little card that says, here, this is your mission.
Right. Right.
It'll just be a lot easier for you.
Right.
And that's so, you would never learn anything. You would never grow. You would never be
Right.
uncomfortable. Thank God for the uncomfort. So
Yeah. Yeah.
to to letting go this week and to releasing what no longer serves you. But I so enjoy our time together, Phil, and I'm so grateful for you. And I can't wait
Yes.
to see you next week.
Yes. I'll see you next week, Courtney. Thank you. This has been great.